Maya Chen's hands trembled as she stared at the stack of medical bills spread across her father's mahogany desk. The numbers blurred together: $47,000 for chemotherapy, $23,000 for radiation treatments, $18,000 for surgical procedures. Each invoice felt like a weight pressing down on her chest, making it harder to breathe in the sterile air of her father's home office. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," Dr. Richard Chen said, his voice heavy with what seemed like genuine regret. He stood behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder, with the same gentle touch he'd used to comfort her through childhood nightmares. "I never wanted you to see this, never wanted you to have to make this choice." Maya picked up an insurance denial letter dated just 2 weeks ago. The cold, bureaucratic language felt like a slap. Treatment deemed experimental. Coverage denied. Patient responsibility $89,000. Her mother's life reduced to a series of rejected claims and mounting debt. "The savings are gone," her father continued, settling into the leather chair across from her. At 58, Dr. Chen still commanded respect at Riverside General Hospital, his graying temples and warm brown eyes inspiring trust in patients and colleagues alike. But now, for the first time in Maya's memory, he looked defeated. "Your mother's first round of treatments wiped out our retirement fund. The second round, we had to mortgage the house. And now, with this experimental therapy being her only hope." Maya's throat constricted. Through the office window, she could see her mother's garden, the roses she'd tended for 20 years now wilting in their beds. Her mother had been too weak to care for them since starting treatment 6 months ago, and Maya had been too buried in her surgical rotation to notice they were dying. "How much do we need?" Maya whispered, though she already knew the answer would shatter everything she'd worked toward. "Between your tuition and living expenses, and what we owe for your mother's care," her father's voice broke slightly. "Maya, I can't ask you to give up medical school. It's your dream, but I don't know what else to do. The treatment center won't continue care without a substantial payment, and if we can't, I'll do it." The words escaped before Maya could stop them, driven by a love so fierce it felt like drowning. "I'll withdraw from the program." "Maya, no, there has to be another way." "There isn't." She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "Mom needs this treatment now. My education can wait. Dreams can wait." But even as she said it, something inside her cracked. 3 years of sleepless nights, countless hours in cadaver labs, the joy she'd felt the first time she successfully sutured a wound, all of it about to become just a memory. Her father's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so proud of you," he said softly. "Your mother will be too. You're saving her life." That night, Maya sat in her childhood bedroom, staring at her acceptance letter to the surgical residency program at Johns Hopkins, the opportunity she'd fought for, the future she'd imagined since she was 12 years old and watched her father save a man's life in the hospital elevator. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer, next to her medical school identification badge and the stethoscope her parents had given her for graduation. The next morning, she would submit her withdrawal paperwork and start job hunting. By the end of the week, she'd be working as a medical assistant at a family practice across town, earning a fraction of what she'd hoped to make as a surgeon, but enough to help keep her mother alive. As she lay in bed that night, Maya whispered a promise to the darkness: "I'll make this sacrifice worth it, Mom, whatever it takes." She had no idea how much that promise would cost her, or how much her father had already stolen from them both. 6 months later, Maya's world collapsed in the most ordinary way possible, while organizing paperwork in her father's office on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. The medical assistant job at Westfield Family Practice paid just enough to cover her mother's co-pays and contribute to the household expenses. Maya had grown accustomed to the ache in her feet from 12-hour shifts, the way her former classmates' eyes filled with pity when they saw her at the hospital cafeteria, and the dreams that still haunted her. Dreams where she was back in surgery, her hands steady and sure as she saved lives instead of filing insurance claims. "Maya, could you help me organize these financial documents?" her father had asked that morning, gesturing toward towers of papers in his office. "The accountant needs everything sorted for the tax preparation, and with your mother's treatments, I'm behind on everything." Her mother was upstairs resting. The experimental therapy was working, thank God, but it left her exhausted. Maya had been grateful for any way to help, especially something that kept her mind occupied and away from the Johns Hopkins quarterly newsletter that had arrived that morning, featuring her former classmates' research achievements. She'd been methodically sorting receipts when her hand brushed against a folder that had slipped behind the desk. Retrieving it, she noticed it was labeled Personal Rec Holdings. Curious, she opened it. The first document made her blink twice. A bank statement for an account she'd never heard of, showing a balance of $1.2 million. Her father's name was on the account, along with someone called Rebecca Morrison. Maya's hands began to shake as she flipped through more statements. Account after account, investment portfolios, property deeds. Her father owned rental properties in 3 states, held stock options worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and had multiple offshore accounts. The most recent statement was dated just last week. "This can't be right," she whispered, but even as she said it, a cold understanding began to creep through her chest, like ice water. She pulled out her phone and photographed everything, her medical training kicking in. Document first, process later. Then she dug deeper into the filing cabinet, her heart hammering against her ribs. What she found made her sink into her father's leather chair, the breath knocked out of her. Insurance statements for her mother's treatments. Not denials, but approvals. Full coverage approval. The experimental therapy that had supposedly bankrupted them, covered at 90%, with a patient responsibility of just $3,000 per month. Not the $30,000 her father had claimed. But it was the next folder that shattered everything she thought she knew about her family. Rec Holdings, partnership agreement, was printed across the top of a legal document. Rebecca Morrison, it turned out, was Dr. Rebecca Morrison, her father's practice partner, and according to the intimate text messages Maya found printed and filed away, his lover for the past 3 years. The messages were dated, strategic, cold. They discussed moving assets offshore, the timeline for her mother's expected death, and their plans to start fresh in Costa Rica once the situation resolves itself. One message from Rebecca, sent just 2 months ago, made Maya's vision blur with rage. "Richard, you're brilliant. Using her guilt about medical school to get extra money from Maya, she'll never suspect. The girl's too noble for her own good." Her father's response: "Maya's always been easy to manipulate. She thinks she's saving her mother, but she's funding our future. Helen will be gone within the year, and then we'll be free. I've been reducing her pain medication slightly. It speeds up the timeline." Maya dropped the phone, her hands covering her mouth to stifle the scream building in her throat. The room spun around her as the full scope of her father's betrayal became clear. He wasn't just stealing money, he was letting her mother suffer unnecessarily, prolonging her pain to maintain his cover story, while bleeding Maya dry of money she barely had. Every dollar Maya had scraped together from her grueling job, every sacrifice she'd made, every time she'd felt guilty for the burden of her education, it had all been a lie. Her father had been playing a long game, using her love for her mother as a weapon against her, while planning to abandon them both. She thought of her mother upstairs, weak and exhausted, receiving substandard pain management, while her husband, the man who'd taken an oath to first do no harm, deliberately increased her suffering for financial gain. Maya's hands clenched into fists. The noble, self-sacrificing daughter was gone, replaced by something harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. Her father had taught her to be thorough, methodical, precise, skills he'd thought would make her a good doctor. He was about to learn how well she'd absorbed those lessons. She gathered every document, every photograph, every piece of evidence, and began to plan. Dr. Richard Chen had made one critical error in his calculations. He'd underestimated exactly how far Maya would go to protect the people she loved. And he was about to discover that the daughter he'd so easily manipulated had inherited more than just his intellect. She'd inherited his capacity for ruthless precision. The only difference was, Maya was going to use hers for justice. Maya didn't sleep for 3 days after her discovery. Instead, she sat in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by printed bank statements, legal documents, and a growing web of connections drawn on poster board like a detective's murder wall. Her medical school training had taught her to approach complex problems systematically, diagnose, plan treatment, execute with precision. Her father's destruction would follow the same methodology. The first call she made was to David Kim, a classmate from her pre-med days, who'd switched to forensic accounting after his father's business partner embezzled their family's life savings. David now worked for the FBI's white-collar crime division. "Maya, God, it's been forever. How's medical school?" David's voice was warm with genuine pleasure. "I need help, David, and I need it to stay between us for now." Maya's voice was steady, clinical. "I have evidence of embezzlement, insurance fraud, and medical malpractice. multiple felonies, probably millions in stolen funds. The warmth in David's voice shifted to professional interest. Are you in danger? Do you need immediate protection? No. I need to make sure the evidence is properly documented and that when I move, it's airtight. The perpetrator is smart, connected, and has already tried to frame innocent people. I can't afford mistakes. Over the next week, Maya developed a three-pronged strategy. First, she would secure her mother's immediate safety and medical care. Second, she would systematically gather evidence to ensure her father's crimes were thoroughly documented. Third, she would time the revelation to maximize impact while protecting herself legally. Her mother's situation was the most delicate. Maya couldn't reveal the truth about her father's manipulation without risking her mother's emotional stability during treatment. Instead, she took a more direct approach. "Mom, I've been thinking about your pain management," Maya said during one of their afternoon visits. "I know Dad's been handling everything, but I've been working in healthcare now, and I think we should get a second opinion." Her mother's eyes, dulled by months of inadequate pain relief, flickered with hope. "I have been struggling more lately. Richard says it's normal, but nothing about cancer pain should be normal," Maya said firmly. "I know someone at the hospital who specializes in palliative care. Would you be willing to see them?" Within 2 days, Sarah Chen, no relation, but Maya had specifically chosen someone with the same surname to avoid suspicion, had prescribed proper pain medication, and ordered comprehensive tests to ensure Maya's mother was receiving optimal care. The relief in her mother's eyes when the pain finally receded was worth every risk Maya was taking. The second phase required more subtlety. Maya leveraged her position at the family practice to research patient advocacy organizations and medical ethics boards. She also reached out to someone she'd never expected to meet, Jennifer Walsh, a former patient of her father's, whose mother had died under suspicious circumstances. Maya had found Jennifer's name in her father's files, along with several others' patients whose families had complained about inadequate care or billing irregularities. Jennifer had been particularly vocal, even hiring a lawyer before eventually settling for a small sum and a non-disclosure agreement. "I knew something was wrong," Jennifer said when Maya called her, introducing herself as a concerned healthcare worker, investigating patterns of care. "My mother was in agony those last months. Dr. Chen kept saying it was normal, that we were doing everything possible, but the bills, they never made sense. My mother was supposed to have good insurance. Would you be willing to speak with investigators if I could guarantee your safety and legal protection?" Maya asked. "Are you kidding? I've been waiting 3 years for someone to take this seriously." Maya connected Jennifer with David, along with 2 other families she'd identified from her father's file. The pattern was clear. Richard Chen had been systematically defrauding insurance companies, overcharging patients, and providing substandard care to increase profit margins and accelerate timelines that served his personal interest. The third phase was the most dangerous, gathering evidence from inside her father's practice. Maya volunteered to help with administrative cleanup at his office, claiming she wanted to learn more about medical practice management. Her father, still believing her to be his naive, grateful daughter, gave her unprecedented access. Working late evenings and weekends, Maya systematically photographed patient files, billing records, and correspondence. She documented cases where patients had been denied appropriate pain management, where insurance had been billed for procedures that weren't performed, and where Richard had deliberately delayed or withheld treatment to increase costs. The most damning evidence came from his computer. Maya had watched her father enter his password hundreds of times, her mother's maiden name combined with his birthday, pathetically predictable. His email correspondence with Rebecca Morrison revealed not just their affair, but detailed plans for their post-divorce life, financed entirely by stolen money. One email exchange made Maya's blood run cold. "Rebecca, what if Maya gets suspicious? She's smart, Richard. Smarter than you give her credit for. Richard, Maya sees what she wants to see. She thinks she's the hero of this story, sacrificing herself for her family. She'll never look deeper because it would mean admitting she's been played. Her ego won't let her. Rebecca, and if she does figure it out, Richard, then we accelerate the timeline. Helen's condition is deteriorating anyway. A few more medication adjustments, and Maya will be too busy grieving to ask questions. By the time she thinks clearly again, we'll be long gone." Maya screenshot everything, her hands shaking with rage. Her father wasn't just a thief, he was actively planning to murder her mother to cover his tracks. That night, she finalized her plan. She would need to move quickly before her father could harm her mother further. The evidence was overwhelming, but she needed to coordinate the timing perfectly. The medical board, the FBI, the state insurance commission, and her mother all needed to learn the truth simultaneously before Richard could destroy evidence or flee. Maya opened her laptop and began typing emails to David, to the medical board, to Jennifer Walsh, and to Dr. Sarah Chen. Each message was carefully crafted, professional, and devastating. She scheduled them to simultaneously at 9 a.m. on Friday, the day her father would be presenting a case study to the State Medical Association, surrounded by colleagues who trusted and respected him. The presentation was titled, Ethical Challenges in Terminal Care, A Physician's Perspective. Maya smiled grimly as she set the timer. Her father was about to learn about ethical challenges in a way he'd never expected. The hunter was about to become the hunted, and Maya had learned from the best. Her father had taught her to be thorough, strategic, and ruthless in pursuit of her goal. He was about to discover she'd been an excellent student. Friday morning arrived with deceptive calm. Maya watched from her apartment window as her father's black Mercedes pulled out of the driveway at exactly 7:30 a.m., heading to the medical conference where he would deliver his presentation on ethical care. In 90 minutes, his world would implode. At 8:45 a.m., Maya called her mother. "Mom, I'm coming over. There's something important we need to discuss." "Of course, sweetheart. Your father's at his conference, so we'll have privacy. Is everything all right? You sound strange." Maya's chest tightened. "Everything's going to be all right, I promise." At exactly 9 a.m., Maya's carefully orchestrated symphony of destruction began. David Kim walked into FBI headquarters with a folder containing evidence of multi-million-dollar embezzlement. Sarah Chen submitted a formal complaint to the state medical board, documenting deliberate medical negligence and possible malpractice. Jennifer Walsh's lawyer filed a motion to reopen her case based on new evidence of systematic fraud. And Maya sat in her mother's living room, holding her hand, preparing to shatter the last of her mother's illusions about the man she'd loved for 30 years. "Mom, Dad hasn't been honest with us about our financial situation, or about your treatment, or about anything." Maya's phone buzzed with messages as she carefully walked her mother through the evidence. David confirming the FBI had initiated an investigation. Dr. Chen reporting that the medical board was launching an emergency review. Jennifer's lawyer confirming that other victims were coming forward. But at 10:15 a.m., Maya's phone rang with a call that made her blood freeze. Her father's name appeared on the screen. "You clever little bitch." His voice was cold, utterly different from the warm paternal tone she'd known her entire life. "I underestimated you, that's my mistake. Dad, where are you? Somewhere safe, somewhere I can think clearly about how to handle this situation." His laugh was bitter. "Did you really think you could destroy me and just walk away? Did you think I wouldn't have contingencies?" Maya's mother looked up from the documents she'd been reading, her face pale but her eyes clear for the first time in months. The proper pain medication had sharpened her mind, and she was following every word of the conversation. "What do you want?" Maya asked. "I want you to call your FBI friend and tell him there's been a mistake. I want you to withdraw the medical board complaint. I want you to make this all go away." "And why would I do that?" "Because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows that you're the one who's been embezzling money. I have documentation showing you had access to all the accounts. I have emails from your computer showing you discussing the embezzlement with Rebecca. I've been planning this insurance policy for months. Maya, if I go down, you go down with me." Maya's hands shook but her voice remained steady. "No one will believe that, won't they? A medical student drowning in debt suddenly drops out of school to work a low-paying job. A daughter with complete access to her father's office and financial records. A bitter young woman who discovered her father was having an affair and decided to frame him out of revenge." His voice grew more confident. "I'm a respected physician with 30 years of unblemished service. You're a college dropout with obvious motives and opportunity. Who do you think they'll believe?" Maya closed her eyes, feeling the trap closing around her. Her father had always been 3 steps ahead. "But here's the thing, sweetheart," her father continued, his voice now sickeningly sweet. "I'm willing to forgive this little tantrum. You call off the investigation, we'll say it was all a misunderstanding, and we can go back to being a family. Your mother needs stability right now, not the stress of a criminal investigation." "Don't," Maya's mother said quietly, speaking for the first time since the call began. "Don't you dare use me to manipulate her again." Maya looked at her mother, really looked at her, the woman who'd raised her, who'd taught her right from wrong, who'd suffered in silence while her husband deliberately increased her pain for financial gain. Her mother's eyes were clear, focused, and absolutely furious. Mom, I heard enough before you got here, Maya. I heard enough to know what kind of man I married. Her mother's voice was stronger than Maya had heard it in years. And I heard enough to know what kind of daughter I raised. Don't let him win. Maya's phone buzzed with another call. David's name flashed on the screen. Maya, where are you? David's voice was urgent. Your father never showed up to his conference. His office has been cleaned out. We think he's running. Maya felt a surge of panic. What do you mean cleaned out? Everything. Files, computers, hard drives. His practice partner Rebecca Morrison is also missing. Maya, if he's destroying evidence, he's not running, Maya said slowly, a new understanding dawning. He's regrouping. This is exactly what he planned. Her mother squeezed her hand. What do you need from me? Maya looked at her mother, the woman her father had betrayed, poisoned, and planned to murder, and saw not a victim but an ally. I need you to be brave one more time, and I need you to trust me when I say this isn't over. Over the next 48 hours, Maya's world became a battlefield. Her father's counterattack was swift and devastating. Forged emails appeared in her name, discussing embezzlement plans. Fake bank records showed money flowing into accounts she'd supposedly opened. A former colleague from medical school came forward claiming Maya had discussed getting revenge on her father months earlier. Maya lost her job when her employer received an anonymous tip about her criminal activities. Her landlord received a call claiming she was involved in fraud and might be arrested. Her former medical school classmates distanced themselves as rumors spread about her alleged crimes, but Maya had learned something crucial from her father's methods. Preparation was every document he'd forged she'd anticipated, every lie he told she had evidence to counter, every move he made, she'd planned for. More importantly, she wasn't fighting alone anymore. Her mother had become a fierce ally, providing testimony about Richard's deliberate medication adjustments and his discussions of timeline acceleration. Jennifer Walsh and the other victims had formed a support network, sharing resources and evidence. David and the FBI had recovered the hidden assets before Richard could move them offshore. On the third day after the initial revelation, Maya received one final call from her father. You're stronger than I thought, he said, and for the first time he sounded tired. But you're still going to lose. I have resources you can't imagine, connections you don't know about. I can keep this fight going for years. Can you? Maya looked around her apartment. Boxes packed, ready to move in with her mother, law school applications spread across her kitchen table. She'd decided that if she was going to fight someone who manipulated the system, she needed to understand the system well enough to beat him at his own game. Yes, she said simply, I can. The difference between us, Dad, is that I'm fighting for something bigger than myself. You're just fighting to avoid consequences. We'll see about that. The line went dead, but Maya wasn't afraid anymore. The escalation phase was ending, and she could see the path to the final confrontation. Her father had taught her to be strategic, thorough, and ruthless when necessary. He was about to learn that the best students eventually surpass their teachers. The showdown came 3 weeks later at the most unlikely place imaginable, Maya's childhood home, during what was supposed to be a celebration of her mother's improved health. Maya had orchestrated it carefully. She'd invited extended family for a recovery dinner, her aunts, uncles, and cousins who'd supported her mother through the illness, along with Dr. Sarah Chen, who'd become both her mother's doctor and Maya's trusted ally. She'd also invited Jennifer Walsh and her husband, introducing them as family friends who'd helped during the difficult time. What the guests didn't know was that Maya had spent the morning installing hidden recording devices throughout the house, with David Kim monitoring from a van parked down the street. The FBI had given her a wire, and her phone was set to live stream to multiple backup locations. Richard had been silent for weeks since their last conversation. Maya knew he was planning something, but she'd decided to force his hand. She'd sent him a single text message that morning. Mom wants to see you. She knows everything, but she wants to hear your side. Family dinner at 6 p.m. This is your chance to explain before it goes to trial. Maya's mother, dressed in her best blue dress and looking healthier than she had in years, greeted guests with a warmth that masked the steel beneath. I'm so grateful you're all here, she told the gathering. There are some things that need to be said, and I want the people I love most to hear them. At exactly 6:30 p.m., Richard's Mercedes pulled into the driveway. Maya watched from the window as her father sat in the car for a full minute, adjusting his tie, checking his reflection, preparing his mask. When he finally walked through the front door, he looked like the man who'd raised her, distinguished, caring, every inch the respected physician. Helen, sweetheart, you look wonderful, he said, moving to embrace Maya's mother. I've missed you so much. This whole misunderstanding has been killing me. Maya's mother stepped back slightly. Have a seat, Richard. We need to talk. The room fell silent as family members sensed the tension. Richard's eyes swept the gathering, taking in faces he recognized and those he didn't. His gaze lingered on Jennifer Walsh, and Maya saw the moment he recognized her, the slight tightening around his eyes, the nearly imperceptible shift in his posture. This is quite a gathering, Richard said carefully. Is there something special we're celebrating? We're celebrating truth, Maya said, stepping forward, and we're saying goodbye to lies. Richard's mask slipped for just a moment, a flash of cold calculation that several family members caught. Maya, sweetheart, I understand you're angry. I understand you feel betrayed, but airing our private family business in front of your victims. Maya interrupted. Jennifer, would you like to tell my father what you told the FBI? Jennifer Walsh stood, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Dr. Chen, you killed my mother, you denied her proper pain medication, you overbilled her insurance, and you let her suffer because it was profitable. She died in agony because of your greed. Richard's face hardened. I don't know what game you think you're playing, Maya, but this woman is clearly disturbed. I've never seen her before in my life. Maya pulled out her phone and played a recording, Richard's own voice discussing Jennifer's mother's case with Rebecca Morrison, detailing how they'd managed her pain medications to extend the profitable treatment window. The color drained from Richard's face, but he recovered quickly. That recording is obviously fake. Anyone can manipulate audio these days. Maya, you're clearly having some kind of breakdown. Show them the bank statements, Maya, her mother said quietly. Maya had prepared a presentation, projected onto the wall where family photos usually hung. Account balances, property deeds, investment portfolios, millions of dollars in hidden assets, while Maya worked double shifts and her mother rationed pain medication. This is what my father was hiding while he convinced me to drop out of medical school to help pay for Mom's uncovered treatments. Maya said, treatments that were actually covered by insurance. Uncle David, her father's own brother, stood up slowly. Richard, tell me this isn't true. Of course it's not true, Richard said, but his voice lacked conviction. Maya has been under tremendous stress. She's been seeing a therapist, haven't you, sweetheart? Dr. Patterson said you were showing signs of paranoid delusions. I've never seen Dr. Patterson, Maya said calmly, but I have seen Dr. Sarah Chen, who's been treating Mom with proper pain medication. Dr. Chen, would you like to explain what you found in Mom's system when you first examined her? Dr. Chen stepped forward, her voice professional and clear. Miss Chen was suffering from deliberate undermedication. Her pain levels were artificially elevated, and her anxiety medication had been replaced with a mild sedative that would have increased her confusion and dependence. Someone with medical knowledge was systematically altering her care to increase her suffering. The room erupted in angry voices, family members demanding explanations. Richard held up his hands, trying to regain control. This is all very convenient, he said, his voice rising. My daughter, who's been caught embezzling money, has assembled a group of people to frame me. Maya, I know you're angry about the affair, but this is going too far. What affair? Maya's mother asked, her voice deadly quiet. Richard's eyes widened. He'd revealed something he hadn't meant. Helen, I didn't mean, that's not what Maya played another recording, this one of Richard and Rebecca Morrison discussing their plans to divorce Maya's mother after her death and move to Costa Rica. The explicit sexual content made several family members uncomfortable, but it was Rebecca's voice discussing accelerating Helen's timeline that made Uncle David curse aloud. You son of a bitch, Uncle David said, moving toward Richard. You were going to let her die. David, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Maya's mother stood, her voice carrying a strength that silenced the room. Richard, for 30 years I loved you. I trusted you with my life, my health, my future. I watched my daughter sacrifice her dreams, because I believed you when you said we were broke. I suffered in pain because I believed you when you said nothing more could be done. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice never wavered. But you know what the worst part is? You made Maya believe she was a burden. You made my brilliant, compassionate daughter think that her education was selfish, while I was dying. You took her future and crushed it in your hands because it was convenient for your lies. Richard's composure finally cracked completely. Helen, please, let me explain. Explain what? How you've been poisoning me, how you've been stealing from your patients, how you planned to abandon me the moment I died. She stepped closer to him, and Maya saw the woman who'd raised her fierce, protective, unbreakable. Or maybe you'd like to explain to your brother how you were going to fake your grief at my funeral while you and your mistress lived off the money you stole. Richard looked around the room at faces filled with disgust and rage. Maya saw the moment he realized his charm, his manipulation, his lifetime of practiced deception, had finally failed him completely. Fine, he said, his voice turning cold and vicious. You want the truth? Yes, I moved money offshore. Yes, I had an affair. Yes, I let you suffer longer than necessary, but I built everything in this family. I paid for Maya's education, for this house, for your comfortable life. I earned the right to make decisions about how our resources were used. The room was dead silent. And you, Maya, he continued, pointing at her with shaking hands. You self-righteous little martyr, you think you're so noble, sacrificing for your family. You were always weak, always needy, always demanding more attention, more money, more support. At least this way your pathetic sacrifice served a purpose. Maya felt something break free inside her chest, not heartbreak, but liberation. The father she'd loved, the man she'd tried so hard to please, had never existed. In his place stood a stranger who saw her love as weakness and her sacrifice as foolishness. You're right, she said quietly. I was weak. I was naive. I trusted you, because I loved you. She looked around the room at the faces of people who truly loved her mother, her uncle, Dr. Chen, even Jennifer Walsh, who'd become an unexpected ally. But you know what? Being weak doesn't make me a victim anymore. It makes me someone who learned to be strong. The sound of cars pulling up outside made everyone turn toward the window. David Kim and two other FBI agents were walking up the front path, along with local police officers. Richard's face went white. Maya, what have you done? I did what you taught me to do, Maya said as the doorbell rang. I planned carefully. I gathered evidence, and I executed my strategy flawlessly. The only difference is, I did it for justice instead of greed. As the FBI agents entered the house, Maya's mother took her hand. I'm proud of you, she whispered. I'm so proud of the woman you've become. Maya watched her father being read his rights, his hands cuffed behind his back, his reputation destroyed forever. She felt no satisfaction, no sense of triumph, only a profound sense of closure and the beginning of something new. The truth was finally free, and so was she. 1 year later, Maya stood in the courtroom as Judge Harrison read the final sentencing. Dr. Richard Chen, you have been found guilty on 17 counts of insurance fraud, embezzlement, medical malpractice, and conspiracy. You are hereby sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, with the possibility of parole after 8 years. Your medical license is permanently revoked, and you are ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $2.3 million to your victim. Richard didn't look at Maya as the bailiff led him away in shackles. He'd aged dramatically over the past year, his hair completely gray, his shoulders stooped, the commanding presence that had defined him completely gone. Rebecca Morrison had been sentenced 6 months earlier to 10 years for her role in the conspiracy, after cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. Maya felt her mother's hand squeeze her. Helen Chen had made a remarkable recovery once she'd received proper medical care and pain management. The experimental therapy, fully covered by insurance as it had always been, had been successful. Her cancer was in complete remission, and she looked healthier than she had in years. It's over, her mother whispered. No, Maya said softly. It's just beginning. The restitution money, combined with the recovered assets from her father's hidden accounts, had been distributed to his victim. Jennifer Walsh and her family received enough to cover her mother's final medical expenses and establish a scholarship fund in her memory. 12 other families affected by Richard's schemes received compensation for their suffering and financial loss. Maya's portion of the recovered funds had been substantial enough to pay back every dollar she'd given her father, plus the money she would have earned during her last year of medical school, but more importantly, it was enough to finish her education and start fresh. She'd made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. Instead of returning to medical school to become a surgeon, Maya had enrolled in law school. The past year had taught her that sometimes healing required more than just medical knowledge. It required understanding systems, fighting corruption, and protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Maya David Kim approached her outside the courthouse, his FBI badge glinting in the afternoon sun. "How does it feel, like justice?" Maya said simply, "Not revenge. Justice." The distinction had become important to her over the past year. Revenge would have been about making her father suffer for personal satisfaction. Justice was about ensuring he could never hurt anyone else, and that his victims received compensation for their losses. The ripple effects of the case had been significant. The state medical board had launched investigations into billing practices at several other practices. New protocols had been established for monitoring pain management in terminal care patients. Jennifer Walsh had become an advocate for patient rights, working with Maya to identify and support other families who'd been victimized by medical fraud. Maya's relationship with her mother had deepened in ways she'd never expected. Helen had sold the family home, too many painful memories, and moved into a comfortable apartment near Maya's law school. They had dinner together twice a week, and Helen had become involved in a support group for families affected by medical malpractice. "I never realized how strong you were," her mother had told her recently. "I thought I was protecting you by not asking questions, by trusting your father completely, but you were the one who protected me. We protected each other," Maya had replied, and it was true. The personal cost had been significant. Maya's relationship with some extended family members remained strained. Uncle David had been supportive, but others struggled to accept the destruction of Richard's reputation. Some of Maya's former medical school classmates still viewed her with suspicion, unsure what to believe about the complicated family drama that had played out so publicly, but Maya had found unexpected allies. Sarah Chen had become both a mentor and friend, helping Maya understand the intersection between medical ethics and legal advocacy. Jennifer Walsh and the other victim families had formed a close-knit support network that met monthly to share experiences and resources. Maya's law school professors had been initially skeptical of her motivations. Was she studying law for revenge or justice? But her academic performance and her work with the campus legal aid clinic had proven her commitment to helping others navigate complex legal and medical systems. On quiet evenings in her small apartment, Maya sometimes wondered about alternate timelines. What if she'd never found those documents in her father's office? What if she'd been less thorough, less strategic? Her mother might have died in unnecessary pain, her father and Rebecca would have disappeared to Costa Rica with their stolen millions, and other families would have continued to suffer. But she also wondered about the cost of the path she'd chosen. The naive young woman who'd trusted completely, who'd believed in the fundamental goodness of the people she loved, that person was gone forever. In her place was someone harder, more cautious, more aware of the capacity for evil that could hide behind kind faces and loving words. Maya had started seeing a therapist, Dr. Martinez, who specialized in family trauma and betrayal. "You've been through something that would break most people," Dr. Martinez had told her. "The fact that you've channeled your pain into helping others rather than into bitterness or revenge is remarkable." "Some days I feel bitter," Maya had admitted. "Some days I miss the person I was before I knew what he was capable of. That's normal. But look what you've built from that knowledge. You've protected your mother, brought justice to other victims, and you're training to prevent this from happening to other families. That naive young woman you miss, she couldn't have done any of that." The hardest moments came unexpectedly. Sometimes Maya would catch herself thinking about calling her father to share good news before remembering that the man she'd wanted to call had never really existed. Sometimes she'd find herself missing the feeling of having a family that felt safe and complete, but there were good moments too. When Jennifer Walsh called to tell her that 3 more families had come forward with evidence of medical fraud at other practices, when her mother laughed, really laughed for the first time in 2 years, when Maya received her first semester law school grades and realized she'd found her true calling. 6 months after the sentencing, Maya received an unexpected letter. It was from her father, written from federal prison. She almost threw it away without reading it, but something made her open it. "Maya, I know you'll never forgive me, and I don't expect you to. I know I destroyed our family and hurt people who trusted me. I know that saying I'm sorry isn't enough. But I want you to know that watching you in that courtroom, seeing the woman you've become, was the first time in years that I felt proud of something I'd done. Not the crimes, not the lies, but raising a daughter strong enough to stand up to me when I was wrong. You were always better than me. I just wish I'd been good enough to deserve you. I hope you find peace, Dad." Maya read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and put it in her desk drawer. She didn't respond, but she didn't throw it away either. Someday maybe, she'd be ready to think about forgiveness. Not for his sake, but for hers. For now it was enough to know that the truth had set them all free. Her mother from pain and deception, the other victims from unanswered questions, and Maya herself from the burden of loving someone who had never deserved that love. Maya Chen was no longer the naive medical student who'd sacrificed everything for her family. She was a woman who'd learned to fight for justice, who'd discovered that sometimes the people who love you most are the ones who see you clearly enough to challenge you to be better. And she was just getting started. As she walked across campus toward her constitutional law class, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Walsh. New family contacted me. Think their doctor might be pulling a Richard Chen. Can you help? Maya smiled and typed back, on my way. The fight for justice never ended, but Maya had learned she was strong enough to keep fighting, and this time she wasn't fighting alone.